The darkness of space stretched endlessly in all directions, but here, in this forgotten corner of the galaxy, something waited that should not exist. A massive structure hung between three dead stars, its crystal walls catching the faint light from distant suns and throwing it back in rainbow patterns that danced across its surface. Itamin stood at the center of the great chamber, his hands clasped behind his back as he watched the final ship approach. Through the transparent walls, his reflection stared back at him from the crystal surface, showing a tall figure dressed in the ceremonial robes of his people. The deep blue fabric moved like liquid water even in the artificial gravity of the station. This place had been built long ago by races whose names were now forgotten in the cosmic wind. It had served as a meeting point for the powerful for over 1,000 years. Hidden from prying eyes and scanning devices by technology that bent space itself around its location, today it would serve a purpose more important than any in its long history. The docking bay sensors chimed softly as the 12th and final vessel locked into position. Taemin allowed himself a small smile of satisfaction. All 12 member races of the Galactic Council had answered his emergency call despite the short notice and the unusual request for absolute secrecy. Some had traveled for weeks through hyperspace to reach this location. Others had used experimental jump drives that could fold reality itself. He turned away from the window and walked toward the central platform, where holographic projectors waited in silent readiness. The chamber around him was enormous, easily large enough to hold a small city, but today it would host only 13 beings. Each one represented a civilization that had mastered the stars, conquered death itself, and built empires spanning multiple galaxies. The first to arrive in person rather than by hologram was Counselor Unesio from the Spiral Arm territories. Her species had evolved from aquatic hunters, and she still moved with the fluid grace of something born to swim through endless depths. Her scaled skin reflected the chamber lights like living metal, and her large dark eyes missed nothing as she surveyed their meeting place. Behind her came Jinho, whose people had once been warriors before discovering the path of technology. His cybernetic implants glowed softly under his natural skin, and his enhanced muscles moved with mechanical precision. Every step he took was calculated, every movement served a purpose. He nodded respectfully to Taemin before taking his designated position. One by one, the others materialized as holograms projected from their distant ships. The technology was so advanced that it was impossible to tell who was physically present and who existed only as light and sound. Each representative brought with them the weight of billions of lives, the responsibility of entire star systems, and the accumulated wisdom of races that had survived the rise and fall of countless civilizations. Minjun appeared as a shimmering outline, his gaseous form barely contained within the projection field. His people existed as living clouds of intelligent particles, and communication with them required specially designed translation matrices. Even through the hologram, his presence felt vast and ancient, like standing next to a storm that had been raging for millennia. The insectoid representative materialized next her compound, eyes reflecting the chamber lights and thousands of tiny rainbows. Hei-1 clicked her mandibles in what her species considered a formal greeting. The sound echoed strangely in the vast space. Her hive mind connected her to trillions of individuals across dozens of worlds, making her perhaps the most well-informed being in the galaxy. As each new figure joined the circle, the weight of the moment grew heavier. These were not merely politicians or diplomats. These were the rulers of space itself, the beings who decided which civilizations would be allowed to reach for the stars and which would remain trapped on their homeworlds forever. The crystalline beings from the outer rim sent their representative Sungmin, whose body was composed entirely of living diamond. His faceted form caught and split the light into spectacular displays that painted the walls in moving patterns of color. When he spoke, his voice rang like musical instruments crafted from precious stones. From the dark nebula regions came the shadow dweller known as Bo-Ram, whose form seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. She existed in a state between energy and matter, her people having transcended physical existence eons ago. Her presence felt like standing at the edge of a black hole where reality itself began to bend and twist. The machine intelligence designated as Hyun-Woo projected itself as a geometric pattern of interlocking shapes that shifted and reformed constantly. His people had uploaded their consciousness into quantum computers the size of moons, leaving their biological origins far behind. Every calculation, every decision was processed through networks that spanned entire star systems. Each arrival brought new tension to the chamber. These beings rarely met in person. Their last gathering had been nearly 2 centuries ago, when they had decided the fate of a young civilization that had discovered faster than light communication that race had been deemed too dangerous and had simply vanished from the galaxy overnight. Now they faced a similar decision, but this time the stakes were infinitely higher. The civilization in question had not merely discovered advanced technology, they had weaponized it in ways that defied all predictions and had begun expanding outward from their small blue world at a rate that should have been impossible. Itamin waited until all 12 positions were filled before moving to the center of the circle. The holographic projectors hummed to life around him, casting his image to those who attended remotely while allowing him to see each representative clearly. His voice, when he spoke, carried easily through the vast chamber, enhanced by acoustic systems built into the crystal walls themselves. The chamber itself seemed to respond to the gravity of the moment. The walls shifted color, subtly moving from clear transparency to deep blue, then to purple, as if reflecting the mood of those gathered within ancient systems designed by forgotten engineers. Monitored everything, recording this moment for whatever beings might inherit the galaxy after they were gone. Emergency protocols had been activated for this meeting. Quantum encryption protected their communications from any possible interception. Temporal shields prevented even the most advanced civilizations from detecting when or where this gathering took place. The technology involved was beyond the comprehension of most species in the galaxy. Around the edges of the great chamber, monitoring systems displayed information from across known space trade routes, showed the movement of goods and resources. Military networks tracked the positions of fleets and weapons. Archaeological teams reported on newly discovered civilizations. All of this data flowed constantly through the council systems, but today it served only as background noise. The real focus was on a single small world orbiting an unremarkable yellow star in what most considered an insignificant arm of the galaxy. Earth appeared on the central display, as the council had been observing it for over 300 years. What they had seen there had changed everything they thought they knew about the development of intelligent life. Taemin raised his hand and the chamber fell silent. Even the humming of the technological systems seemed to quiet in response. The moment had arrived to discuss what their intelligence services had classified as the greatest threat the galaxy had ever faced. A species that had evolved not just intelligence or technology, but something far more dangerous. They had evolved the ability to adapt faster than evolution itself should allow. The silence stretched across the crystal chamber like a living thing waiting to be broken. Taemin gestured toward the central holographic display, and the image of Earth appeared floating in the air before them. The small blue world spun slowly, showing the familiar continents and oceans that the council had been monitoring for centuries. But something was different now. The planet that had once been covered in simple agricultural settlements and small cities now blazed with the light of advanced civilization. Orbital stations ringed the world like a crown of stars, and the dark side of the planet glowed with the energy signatures of massive industrial complexes. Ambassador Hyjin stepped forward from her position in the circle. Her tall, graceful form moved with the fluid motion of her aquatic ancestors, but her expression was grave with concern. She had been the primary observer for the human monitoring project, and what she had discovered would change everything. The council thought they knew about species development. Fellow council members, she began, her voice carrying clearly through the vast chamber, what you are about to see will challenge everything we believe about the natural progression of intelligent life. The data we have collected over the past 50 years shows a pattern of development that should be impossible. The holographic display shifted, showing a timeline of human technological advancement. The early centuries moved slowly with gradual improvements in basic tools and simple machines, but then something changed. The pace of development began to accelerate and then accelerate again until the timeline became a blur of revolutionary breakthroughs. Look at this pattern, Hyjin continued, highlighting specific points on the timeline. In the year they call 1903, humans achieved powered flight. Within 60 years they had reached their moon Within another 50 years, they had established permanent colonies on 3 other worlds in their system. This progression defies every model we have for technological development. The insectoid representative Hay1 clicked her mandibles in what her species considered deep thought. Her compound eyes reflected the timeline data as she processed the information through her connection to the hive mind. The collective intelligence of trillions of individuals was analyzing the human development pattern and finding it deeply disturbing. The normal progression for a species like humans should require at least 500 years to achieve interplanetary travel, Hay1 stated, her voice carrying the weight of collective wisdom. Instead, they accomplished this in less than 100 years, but that is not the most concerning aspect of their development. The display changed again, showing detailed analysis of human technological achievements. Rather than following the expected path of gradual improvement, humans seemed to make sudden leaps that bypassed entire stages of development they had discovered. Principles of physics that most species took millennia to understand, and they had done so through methods that appeared almost random. Jin Ho, the warrior-turned-technologist, stepped closer to examine the data his cybernetic implants interfaced directly with the holographic systems, allowing him to process the information at superhuman speeds. What he found made his enhanced nervous system send alarm signals throughout his body. Their military development is even more concerning, he announced. The display shifted to show human weapons technology. From simple projectile weapons, they progressed to nuclear devices within decades. From nuclear weapons to antimatter bombs, within another generation, they have weaponized technologies that we consider purely theoretical. The shadow being BORM, whose form seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, moved like living darkness as she studied the data. Her species had transcended physical existence long ago, and their perspective on technological development was measured in geological timescales. Even to her ancient viewpoint, the human progression was alarming. They do not follow the pattern of gradual enlightenment that leads to wisdom before power, she observed in a voice that seemed to come from the void itself. Instead, they have gained the ability to destroy worlds before they have learned the wisdom to preserve them. This combination has never been seen before in our monitoring of emerging civilizations. The machine intelligence Han Wu processed the data through quantum networks that spanned star systems. His geometric form shifted and reformed as calculations flowed through his consciousness at speeds that biological minds could not comprehend. The results of his analysis were displayed as complex mathematical models that filled the air around him. The probability calculations are clear, he announced in a voice that sounded like harmonizing computer systems. If current trends continue, humans will achieve technological parity with council member species within 30 standard years. Within 50 years, they will surpass us. Within 100 years, they will possess the capability to threaten the existence of all current galactic civilizations. A wave of shock rippled through the assembled representatives. Even species that had survived the rise and fall of galaxies found themselves facing the possibility of obsolescence. The idea that a single world could threaten the combined might of 12 galactic empires seemed impossible, yet the data was undeniable. But Haijin was not finished with her revelations. The most disturbing aspect of human development is not their speed, she continued, but their adaptability. Every challenge they face becomes an opportunity for advancement. Every limitation becomes a problem to be solved through innovation. They do not accept the boundaries that constrain other species. The display showed examples of human problem solving in extreme environments. They had learned to survive in the vacuum of space, to thrive in the crushing depths of gas giant atmospheres, to extract resources from the hearts of dying stars. Each environment that should have been impossible for them to survive had instead become another frontier to be conquered. Their military conflicts follow the same pattern, Haijin explained, showing historical data from human wars. Each war has driven technological advancement at an accelerated pace. They have learned to turn every weapon used against them into a more powerful weapon to use against their enemies. This pattern of adaptive warfare has never been observed in any other species. The crystalline being Sungmin, whose diamond body reflected the display data in brilliant patterns, spoke with a voice like ringing crystal. The implications are clear. If humans continue this pattern of adaptive advancement, they will eventually encounter one of our civilizations. The result will be either their absorption of our technology or our elimination. As a competitive threat, the gaseous entity, Minjun, whose form barely held together within the projection field, added his own analysis. My people have observed the development of consciousness across thousands of species. Human consciousness is fundamentally different from others. It is not content with understanding the universe. It seeks to remake the universe according to its own design. The weight of these revelations settled over the chamber like a heavy blanket. Each representative understood that they were facing a decision that would determine the future of galactic civilization. The small blue world spinning in the holographic display represented either the greatest opportunity or the greatest threat they had ever encountered. Taman looked around at the assembled council members, seeing the fear and uncertainty in their various forms of expression. For the first time in the history of the Galactic Council, they were facing a problem that could not be solved through superior technology or overwhelming force. They were facing a species that adapted faster than they could plan. The question now was what to do about it. The holographic displays around the chamber shifted from peaceful images of Earth to something far more ominous. Detailed schematics of human military technology filled the air, while tactical assessments scrolled past in streams of data that made even the advanced council members struggle to keep pace with the information. Military strategist Jin Wu stepped into the center of the circle, his enhanced form casting sharp shadows on the crystal floor. His cybernetic implants glowed brighter as they interfaced with the chamber systems, drawing upon military databases that contained the combat records of every known species in the galaxy. What you are about to see, he announced, will demonstrate why the human situation has moved beyond a simple monitoring mission to a full threat assessment. His voice carried the authority of someone who had witnessed the rise and fall of countless civilizations through warfare. The first display showed a comparison between human military development and the established patterns followed by other species. Most civilizations develop defensive capabilities, first learning to protect themselves before creating weapons of conquest. This progression usually took several thousand years and resulted in military doctrines focused on preservation rather than destruction. Humans followed the opposite pattern. Jin Wu explained as the data painted a disturbing picture. They developed offensive capabilities first and then adapted defensive measures in response to threats. This has resulted in a military philosophy that views conflict as an opportunity for growth rather than something to be avoided. The chamber filled with three-dimensional battle simulations showing human military tactics in action. The council members watched in fascination and growing horror as human forces demonstrated strategies that defied conventional military wisdom. Rather than seeking quick, decisive victories, humans seemed to prefer prolonged conflicts that allowed them to test and improve their capabilities. Look at this pattern of escalation. Jinwu continued, highlighting specific examples from human history. When faced with superior numbers, they developed superior technology. When faced with superior technology, they developed superior tactics. When faced with superior tactics, they developed superior strategies. Each challenge made them stronger rather than weaker. The insectoid representative Hei-1 processed the information through her hive mind connection. The collective intelligence of her species had analyzed millions of military conflicts across the galaxy, and the human approach was unlike anything in their vast database. Their concept of total war is particularly concerning. She observed total war means the complete mobilization of all resources toward military victory. Most species are incapable of sustaining such efforts for extended periods. Humans not only sustain total war, but they use it as a catalyst for accelerated development. Jinwu nodded grimly and activated another set of displays. These showed human industrial capacity during their major conflicts. The numbers were staggering. During their global conflicts, humans had transformed entire continents into weapons manufacturing centers. They had reorganized their entire civilization around the production of military equipment, and they had done so voluntarily. But the most disturbing aspect of human warfare was yet to be revealed. Jinwu gestured, and the displays showed detailed analysis of human psychological profiles during combat. Other species fought to survive or to protect their territory. Humans fought for concepts that had no physical existence: honor, glory, freedom, democracy, justice. This means they will fight even when victory provides no tangible benefit, Jinwoo explained. They will sacrifice everything for abstract principles that exist only in their minds. This makes them impossible to negotiate with using conventional diplomatic methods because their motivations are not based on rational self-interest. The Shadow being Bo-Ram, whose ancient perspective spanned eons of galactic history, found the human approach to warfare deeply troubling. Her people had transcended physical conflict long ago, but they remembered the patterns that led to the extinction of countless species. They have weaponized their own mortality, she observed in her voice like whispers from the void. Most species fear death and use that fear to make rational decisions about conflict. Humans use their mortality as a weapon, accepting certain death if it advances their cause. This psychological approach to warfare has never been successfully countered. The machine intelligence Hanwoo had been running continuous combat simulations using every available piece of data about human military capabilities. His quantum processing networks had modeled millions of possible scenarios, and the results were uniformly disturbing. I have completed comprehensive battle analysis, he announced. The geometric patterns of his form shifted to display the results. Every simulation shows the same outcome. If current trends continue, human military capabilities will exceed our own within 3 decades. The displays filled with tactical projections showing hypothetical conflicts between human forces and each council member civilization. The results were devastating in scenario after scenario. Human forces adapted to alien weapons and tactics faster than the aliens could adapt to human capabilities. Their rate of battlefield innovation is unprecedented. Hyun-woo continued. During actual combat, humans modify their equipment, develop new tactics, and implement strategic changes in real time. Other species require months or years to make similar adaptations. Humans accomplish this in hours or days. The crystalline being, Sungmin, whose diamond form had survived the collapse of several galactic civilizations, found the human military doctrine particularly alarming. His people had achieved immortality through perfect integration with their crystalline matrix, but humans seem to have achieved something even more dangerous. They have eliminated the distinction between soldier and civilian, he observed. Every human is trained for combat from childhood. Every human understands the basics of military organization and weapons technology. This means their entire population is a potential military force. The gaseous entity Minjun added his own troubling observations about human psychological warfare. His people existed as collective consciousness, and the human approach to mental combat was unlike anything they had encountered. They wage war against the mind itself, he stated. Human propaganda systems can convince entire populations to support military actions that provide no direct benefit to those populations. They can make other species fight against their own interests by manipulating their beliefs. And Emotion Jinwoo activated the final set of displays showing the most classified intelligence the Council possessed. These were projections of human military development based on current trends. The weapons systems showed capabilities that approached those of the Council members themselves, but with design philosophies that were fundamentally different. Human weapons are not built for conquest or defense, he explained. They are built for elimination, complete removal of the enemy from existence. This approach to warfare has historically led to the extinction of entire species, including the species that developed such weapons. The implication hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Humans had developed military capabilities that could threaten the existence of species that had dominated the galaxy for millennia, and they had done so in a fraction of the time it had taken those species to achieve their current level of power. But perhaps most disturbing of all was the realization that humans were still in the early stages of their development. The weapons and tactics they had demonstrated so far were primitive compared to what they might achieve in the coming decades. The Council members looked at each other with expressions of growing alarm. They had called this meeting to discuss how to handle first contact with an emerging civilization. Instead, they found themselves planning for a war that might determine the survival of galactic civilization itself. The crystal chamber had grown heavy with tension as the full scope of the human threat became clear to every council member. The holographic displays still showed the devastating military projections, but now they seemed less like academic exercises and more like previews of an inevitable future counselor. So Young, the eldest member present, moved slowly toward the center of the circle. Her ancient form carried the weight of countless decisions made over millennia of galactic governance. She had seen civilizations rise and fall, had witnessed the birth of stars and the death of entire species. Yet the choice before them now was unlike any she had faced. Fellow council members, she began, her voice carrying the wisdom of ages, we have reached a point where discussion must give way to decision. The human situation cannot be allowed to continue without intervention. Every day we delay increases the magnitude of the threat they represent. The chamber systems responded to her words, activating decision protocols that had not been used for over 2 centuries. The walls shifted color to deep red, indicating that the council was now in formal session for a civilizational determination, the most serious classification available to the galactic government. I proposed 3 options for our consideration. So Young continued as the holographic displays shifted to show detailed analysis of each possibility. First, immediate preemptive military action to eliminate the human threat before it can fully develop. Second, diplomatic contact to attempt peaceful coexistence and possible integration. Third, complete withdrawal from this sector of the galaxy to avoid any contact with human expansion. The debate that followed was unlike anything in the Council history. Species that had coexisted peacefully for millennia found themselves divided along lines that had not existed since the formation of the galactic government. Each option carried consequences that could reshape the balance of power across known space. The warrior faction, led by Jingwu, argued forcefully for immediate military intervention. His enhanced form stood rigid with determination as he addressed the council. The projections are clear, he stated. If we act now, we can eliminate the threat with minimal casualties to our own forces. If we wait even 5 more years, the cost in lives and resources will be exponentially greater. Supporting his position was the hive mind representative Haewon, whose collective intelligence had analyzed every possible military scenario. The wisdom of trillions of minds supported the conclusion that decisive action was necessary. My people have experienced the consequences of allowing aggressive species to develop unchecked. She stated, the result is always the same: extinction for everyone except the aggressor. But the diplomatic faction argued equally forcefully for peaceful contact. The gaseous entity Min Jun, whose species had achieved enlightenment through understanding rather than conquest, believed that humans could be guided toward a less destructive path. Perhaps their aggressive nature can be channeled toward positive purposes. He suggested every species goes through phases of development. What we see as threatening behavior might simply be the growing pains of a young civilization struggling to find its place in the galaxy. The machine intelligence Han Wu supported this view with computational analysis of historical precedents. His geometric form shifted through complex patterns as he processed vast amounts of data about species development cycles. Statistical analysis shows that 23% of aggressive species eventually develop peaceful coexistence with neighboring civilizations, he reported. While the risk is significant, the potential benefits of peaceful contact with humans could be enormous. Their adaptability could be an asset rather than a threat. The shadow being Bo Rem, whose ancient perspective transcended normal concepts of time and space, offered a third viewpoint that challenged both military and diplomatic approaches. Her form seemed to absorb light from the chamber as she spoke. We assume that contact is inevitable, she observed, but the galaxy is vast and humans are still confined to a single star system. Complete withdrawal would ensure our survival while allowing them to develop without interference. They might eventually achieve wisdom to match their power. The crystalline being Sun Min, whose diamond form had witnessed the collapse of multiple galactic civilizations, supported the withdrawal option based on historical patterns. Every civilization believes it can handle the emergence of a superior species, he stated. The archaeological record shows that such confidence is usually fatal. Better to preserve what we have built than risk everything on uncertain outcomes. As the debate continued, the council members found themselves revealing fears and prejudices that had been hidden for centuries. The aquatic dwellers worried about human expansion into their ocean worlds. The crystalline beings feared that human adaptability would make them immortal. Perspective irrelevant, the machine intelligences calculated that human innovation could make their technological advantages obsolete. Listen to every argument, processing the wisdom and fears of species that had ruled the galaxy for longer than human civilization had existed. The weight of the decision pressed down on him like the gravity of a collapsing star. Whatever choice they made would echo through history for thousands of years. The formal vote was called using protocols established when the galaxy was young. Each species cast their decision into the quantum matrix that recorded all council determinations. The results would be binding on every member civilization, regardless of their individual preferences. The military action proposal received 4 votes from species that had experienced the rise of aggressive neighbors and had learned that early intervention was less costly than prolonged conflict. The diplomatic contact proposal received 3 votes from species that had achieved their current status through peaceful expansion and believed that understanding was more powerful than force. The complete withdrawal proposal received 5 votes from species that had survived previous galactic catastrophes by avoiding contact with dangerous civilizations so young. Announced the results with the gravity befitting a decision that could determine the fate of multiple civilizations. The Council has chosen withdrawal. All monitoring stations will be evacuated. All observation posts will be abandoned. All records of human development will be classified at the highest security levels. But even as the decision was made, each council member understood that withdrawal might only delay the inevitable. Humans were expanding outward from their home system, and eventually they would encounter other species. The council could choose not to be the first contact, but they could not prevent contact from happening. The question now was whether their withdrawal would give humans time to develop the wisdom to use their power responsibly, or whether it would simply give them time to become even more dangerous. As the council members prepared to return to their respective territories, each carrying orders to begin the greatest retreat in galactic history, they could not shake the feeling that they were making a mistake that future generations would pay for in ways they could not yet imagine. The age of human expansion was beginning, and the galaxy would never be the same. The holographic transmission crackled to life in the center of the crystal chamber. Just as the council members were preparing to implement their withdrawal decision, the image that appeared was that of a human female, but the council members knew that appearances could be deceiving when dealing with their most skilled. Operative Agent Dayun materialized as a perfect hologram, her disguise so complete that even advanced scanners would have identified her as fully human. She had been living on Earth for 20 years, her shape-shifting abilities allowing her to blend seamlessly into human society. The intelligence she had gathered during those years was about to change everything the council thought they knew. Council members, she began, her voice tight with urgency that made every representative lean forward in their chairs. I am transmitting this final report from Earth. Under emergency protocols, what I am about to tell you will require immediate revision of all previous assessments and decisions. The transmission quality flickered slightly, indicating the enormous distance the signal had traveled and the advanced encryption required to prevent human interception. Data in existence on Earth had been one of the most closely guarded secrets in galactic intelligence history. The humans know we are here, she announced without preamble. The simple statement hit the chamber like a physical blow. Every council member felt the implications racing through their minds like wildfire. If humans knew about galactic civilization, then every assumption about first contact was wrong. Her holographic form gestured and new displays filled the chamber showing human military installations that had been hidden from orbital observation. These facilities were buried deep underground or concealed within seemingly innocent civilian structures, but their purpose was unmistakably military. For the past 5 years, human governments have been operating under what they call the alien contingency protocol. Dayun continued, they have been preparing for contact with extraterrestrial civilizations, and they have been doing so with the assumption that such contact would be Hostile the displays showed weapon systems that incorporated design. Principles clearly derived from council member technology, but adapted in ways that suggested deep understanding of alien capabilities rather than simple reverse engineering. They have been tracking our observation vessels, she explained. Her form shifted slightly as the holographic projection struggled with the vast distance. The humans call them UFOs, unidentified flying objects, but their military knows exactly what they are and where they come from. Jin Wu, the military strategist, felt his enhanced nervous system flood with alarm signals as he processed the implications. This was far worse than any scenario they had planned for. A species that knew it was being observed would behave completely differently from one that believed it was alone. How long have they known? He demanded, his cybernetic implants interfacing directly with the transmission systems to analyze every detail of Dayun report. At least 50 years, she replied, possibly longer. Their military has been developing countermeasures specifically designed to neutralize council member defensive systems. They have created weapons that exploit the weaknesses in our shield technology's energy drains that can disable our power systems and communication jammers that can disrupt our quantum networks, the shadow being BORAM, whose ancient perspective had seen countless civilizations rise and fall, felt something she had not experienced in millennia: fear. The idea that humans had been preparing for galactic contact, while pretending ignorance, suggested a level of strategic thinking that was deeply troubling. They have been studying us while we studied them, she observed, in her voice like whispers from the void. This means every piece of intelligence we have gathered about them was gathered while they knew they were being observed. They have been showing us only what they wanted us to see. Machine intelligence Haiyan processed this information through quantum networks that spanned star systems. His calculations showed that human capabilities might be far beyond what the Council had estimated if they had been deliberately concealing their true development level. Recalculating all previous projections, he announced the geometric patterns of his form shifted rapidly as new data flowed through his consciousness. If humans have been concealing their true capabilities for decades, then our estimates of their technological level may be off by several orders of magnitude. Dayun nodded grimly as if she had expected this reaction. There is more, she continued. The transmission flickered again, this time more severely, indicating that her communication window was limited. Human intelligence services have decoded our communication frequencies. They have been intercepting council transmissions for years. Their linguists have been working on translating our languages, and they have made significant progress. The implications were staggering. Not only did humans know about the Galactic Council, but they had been gathering intelligence about council operations activities and possibly even the location of important facilities. They know about this meeting, she announced. The words fell into the chamber like stones dropped into still water. They know about the vote to withdraw. They know about the threat assessment. They know about the military projections. Every council member felt the same chill of realization running through their various forms of consciousness. The secret meeting that was supposed to determine human fate had been compromised from the beginning. The humans were not passive subjects of observation. They were active participants in their own evaluation, the crystalline being Sungmin, whose diamond form reflected the chamber lights in patterns of increasing agitation, asked the question that every council member was thinking. If they know about our decision to withdraw, what are they planning to do about it? Dayun's image began to fade as the transmission reached its limits, but her final words carried clearly through the chamber. They are not planning to let us leave, she said. They are planning to make contact on their own terms. The holographic projection dissolved, leaving the council members staring at empty air where their most valuable intelligence asset had been. The silence that followed was deeper than the void between stars. Each representative understood that everything had changed in the space of a few minutes. The humans were no longer a civilization to be observed, evaluated, and potentially contacted at the council convenience. They were an active player in galactic politics with their own agenda and their own timeline for first contact. The men looked around at the assembled representatives, seeing his own shock and growing alarm reflected in their various expressions. The vote to withdraw had been based on the assumption that humans were unaware of galactic civilization and would remain so for the foreseeable future. That assumption was now revealed to be completely wrong. The question was no longer whether to make contact with humans. The question was how to respond when humans made contact with them. Based on everything they had learned about human military capabilities and strategic thinking that contact was going to happen very soon, the alarms began as a low, harmonic vibration that seemed to come from the crystal walls themselves. At first, the council members thought it was another system malfunction, but the sound grew stronger and more urgent until it filled the entire chamber with its warning tone emergency. Protocols activated automatically as the station sensors detected incoming vessels. The chamber walls shifted from their normal transparency to deep, red warning displays that showed tactical information streaming in from across the local star system. Taman felt his heart stop as he watched the sensor data populate the holographic displays. 12 ships had just emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation around the supposedly secret station. The vessels were sleek and unfamiliar, but their design incorporated elements clearly derived from every council member species. Impossible, he whispered, but the evidence was undeniable before his eyes. The ships arranged themselves in a precise pattern that demonstrated complete knowledge of the station defensive capabilities and structural weaknesses. Jinwoo cybernetic combat systems activated automatically as he processed the tactical situation. His enhanced nervous system flooded with information about the approaching vessels. Their weapons were active, their shields were powered, and their positioning suggested they understood exactly how to exploit every vulnerability in the station. Design, how did they find us? He demanded, but even as he spoke, the answer was becoming clear. The humans had not just been listening to council communications, they had been tracking council vessels. Their intelligence network was far more sophisticated than anyone had imagined. The machine intelligence Hanwo interfaced directly with the station computer systems, trying to understand how their most secure location had been compromised. His quantum processing networks ran through millions of possibilities in nanoseconds, but the conclusion was always the same. They have been tracking us for years, he announced. The geometric patterns of his form shifted into defensive configurations as his people prepared for possible combat. These ships did not just arrive, they were already in position, waiting for our meeting to conclude. The shadow being Bo-Ram, whose ancient perspective had witnessed the rise and fall of countless civilizations, felt the weight of cosmic irony settling over the situation. Her people had transcended physical existence to avoid exactly this kind of confrontation, yet here they were facing the consequences of their own hubris. We became the observed while believing we were the observers, she said in her voice, like whispers from the void. This has never happened before in all the eons of galactic civilization. The crystalline being, Sung-Min, whose diamond form had survived multiple galactic catastrophes, found the situation deeply troubling. His people had achieved immortality through perfect integration with their crystalline matrix, but even immortals could be destroyed by sufficient force. The humans have achieved something unprecedented, he observed. They have reversed the fundamental relationship between emerging and established civilizations. We are no longer the ones who decide when contact occurs. The communication systems crackled to life as the first human transmission reached the station. The voice that emerged was calm, confident, and utterly human, but it carried undertones of absolute authority that made every council member understand that the balance of power had shifted permanently. This is Admiral Park of the United Earth Fleet, the voice announced. We have been monitoring your communications and we know why you are here. We have been waiting for this moment for a very long time. Taman stepped forward to respond, but found himself at a loss for words. Every diplomatic protocol in galactic history was based on the assumption that advanced civilizations would initiate contact with primitive ones. The current situation had no precedent in thousands of years of interstellar relations. Admiral Park continued speaking as if he understood the council confusion. We know about your threat assessments. We know about your military projections. We know about your vote to withdraw from this sector, and we know that you have been watching us for over 3 centuries. The implications were staggering. Not only had humans detected the council observation program, but they had allowed it to continue while secretly gathering their own intelligence about galactic civilization. They have been playing a game with rules the council had never imagined. We have a proposal. Admiral Park continued. Permission to come aboard. We believe it is time for a more formal introduction between our civilizations. The request was delivered in the tone of a suggestion. But every council member understood that it was actually an ultimatum. The human ships surrounding the station had the firepower to destroy it completely if their request was denied. Hey, one, the insectoid representative processed the situation through her hive mind connection. The collective intelligence of trillions of individuals reached the same conclusion. That each council member was discovering individually the humans had achieved the impossible. They have conquered us without firing a shot, she observed. The greatest military minds in galactic history had been outmaneuvered by a species that had barely achieved interstellar travel. Minjun, the gaseous entity whose people existed as collective consciousness, found the human approach to first contact both fascinating and terrifying. They had prepared for this moment with the same methodical thoroughness they applied to everything else. They studied us as thoroughly as we studied them, he realized, but they did so while pretending ignorance. This level of strategic deception indicates planning abilities that exceed our own. The council members looked at each other with expressions of shock, bewilderment, and growing respect. The species they had considered a threat to be managed had just demonstrated that they were capable of managing the managers. Taemin finally found his voice and activated the communication system. Admiral Park, he said formally, this is Council Leader Taemin of the Galactic Council. You have our permission to dock. Welcome to your first official contact with galactic civilization. Even as he spoke the words, he understood their historic significance. The age of human expansion had begun not with conquest or exploration, but with a diplomatic coup that had turned the entire galactic power structure upside down. The humans had not just joined galactic civilization, they had announced their intention to lead it. As the first human shuttle approached the docking bay, every council member understood that they were witnessing the end of one era and the beginning of another. The galaxy that had been stable for millennia was about to become a very different place, and humanity had just made it clear that they intended to be the ones deciding what that difference would look like. The hunters had indeed become the hunted, and the age of human dominance was about to begin.